when I first joined, we were in the process of getting ready to move. There was a national youth organization that had been formed called the Du Bois Clubs, and they were getting ready to found in 1970 another youth organization, which was called the Young Workers Liberation League, YWLL. So I was involved in the preparations for that, the founding convention locally. We held discussion groups and educationals, and participated in demonstrations against the war. And I would say that, you know, a lot of my impression, not that I you know, speak from a wide experience, and my impression of a lot of red diaper babies is they're very political, intensely so, until they hit about 22. And then they realize there's a whole nother life out there and you never see them again. And so for me, what was different was that I came to my own commitment. It wasn't just my parents' commitment, it was my own commitment, and that primarily grew out of the war in Vietnam and the struggle against it, the peace movement, reading about SDS and the civil rights movement, and all those activities. You know, just before, I guess it was just before I left St. Louis, there was a big demonstration that spring after the assassination of Dr. King, which was the biggest demonstration in St. Louis to that point, which I think had about 30,000 people in it. And it involved, this is a little bit, you know, second or third hand, but it was a guy who was a taxi driver who said something has to be done. He wasn't in any organization or in any, you know, he was just, he felt something had to be done. So he was the spark plug of getting the mainstream civil rights organizations and other groups together, which they weren't doing on their own, to start this march. And it had other things. My father was in the symphony, and they performed a concert at the new hall, Powell Hall, in honor of Dr. King. And for the first time, a number of local black musicians performed with the symphony. There weren't any African Americans in the symphony at the time. Several performed and later became members of the symphony. But so there were a whole series of things. So I was, civil rights was what I grew up hearing about, and which affects me even today. Reading about that period affects me emotionally in a way that other things don't. But my own conscious commitment came about because of the war in Vietnam and the struggle against it. So I went to the demonstrations, passed out the paper, went to discussion groups, participated in a club. There's a club of, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 people, and we met every couple of weeks and talked about what people were involved in and what was coming up and what we were going to do about it, and did things like pay dues and raise money and all those kinds of things.